Everyone's froze. Did other people get that freeze?
No.
Oh, it's just me. Okay.
I think the camera was shocked to see the Coleman Cook younger on screen.
Over to you, Chair. We're now live. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Right, I will apologise before I start because I have had issues with my Chromebook. I did it on Monday and it tried it on again. It only takes a minute to come back on again. Anyway, good afternoon, members. Welcome to this planning meeting on 14th of April 2021. As usual, I will read out, first of all, your names and please confirm that you are on this call. No alphabetical order. Keith Coleman Cook.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, here, Chair.
Councillor Jill Bayford.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Curry.
Here, Chair.
Councillor John Dennis.
Chair, it's Councillor Rashevsky here. Councillor Dennis has just rung me this second and said he can't get through on his Chromebook. Can Democratic Services give him a ring or something to help him?
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Pat Moore.
Here, Chair.
Nice to see you back, Pat.
Thank you.
Councillor Mike Garner.
Yeah, I'm here, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor David Hart.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Heather Keane.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Paul Moore.
Here, Chair.
Councillor Matthew Scott. I'm aware he's not here, but as you know, I go through the names. Councillor Rashevsky.
Here, present, Chair.
Councillor Linda Wright.
Here, Chair.
And obviously myself. Okay, the usual, if I may, members, we have to go through my script. This afternoon, if you have any technical difficulties during the meeting, then please contact Democratic Services on call, who will attempt to assist you. Today on call is Katie. Her number is 577046 and will be placed, as she has done already, in the chat box on the right of your screen. I would ask all participants to mute your microphone when you're speaking. This minimises the background noise and will help everyone in listening to the proceedings. Microphones must only be turned on if the participant has been granted permission to speak. To gain by permission to speak, please make a note again in the chat box on your right. If I do miss you, please shout at me, members. And if you could wait and make a note until the other person has finished speaking. Would everybody present please ensure that the mobile phones are turned to silent and they are not used to make or receive phone calls while this meeting is in progress. Please also refrain from checking emails or conducting any other business and ensure that you are in a quiet room, free from distractions for the duration of this meeting. As you are aware, members, this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public, and following the meeting, the recording will be available on the Council's YouTube channel. At this point, members, I am going to ask you if you would, as we are well aware now that on Friday of last week, we all heard the very sad loss of the Duke of Edinburgh at the age of 99. So I would ask you to bear with me just for a minute's silence in his memory, and our thoughts obviously with the Queen and the members of her family. Thank you, members. Right, moving on with our agenda. Members requesting to speak under Council Procedure 20.1. I have Councillor Brenda Rogers wishes to speak under item 4E, 51 London Road, Ramsgate. Councillor Pugh on agenda item 4F, land on the west side of Tothill Street, Minster. Are there any other members online who wish to speak? Please say so now so we can make a note. Okay, there isn't. Thank you very much. So agenda item 1, apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Scott. I don't think there is a substitute for Councillor Scott.
Chair, I've just managed to get on. I had trouble. This is Councillor Dennis.
Yes.
I've just got on. Okay, I'm here.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dennis. Yep, I see you pop up on my screen. Thank you for that. I understand you had a few difficulties there. Thank you. And
yes,
that is noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's no other apologies for absence. Any declarations of interest? No. Agenda item 3, approving minutes. Do members agree that the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting, which was held on the 17th of March 2021, be approved? Could I have a proposer, please?
I'll propose that for you, Chair, Councillor Rashevsky.
I'll second it, Chair, Councillor Alban.
Thank you very much. Do members agree?
Agree.
Agreed.
Any member not agree? No. They are carried. Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, schedule of planning applications and public speaking. Once again, I think we're moving there, all being well, but site visits will take place once it is safe to do so. I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully for all of us there, if we require site visits. The following items have been reserved for public speaking. They are agenda items 4A, 4C, 4E, and 4F. So if members could make a note of that, please. And now moving on, for a point of information, I'm going to hand over to our planning manager, Mr. Livingston.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got 3 points of information on 3 of the agenda items, schedule items that are being discussed. So the first is on schedule item 4A, which is 3 Viking Close. Condition 6, as proposed in the agenda, recommends that one of the windows is obscure glazed on the first floor side elevation. Officers are updating that condition in terms of the submission of the recommendation to members to require that all of the first floor side windows on the north elevation are to be obscure glazed. And I'll outline which windows I'm talking about when we get to the presentation on that item. On schedule item 4E, 51 London Road, after the publishing of the agenda, the Council received 6 additional letters of support, meaning in total the Council has received 22 letters of support on that planning application. On schedule item 4F, which is the land at Tothill Street, condition 16 on the application outlines the requirement for a scheme of interpretation of archaeology on the site. So requirement to submit a scheme including potentially public art notice boards to further the understanding of the existing archaeology. It's proposed to alter the stated trigger for the submission of those details as currently drafted in the conditions in the council agenda, from being prior to the commencement of development to actually prior to the occupation of the development, and that is a change that's put forward to members in the recommendation by officers as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Moving on again to agenda item 4A, number 3, Viking Close. I will ask Suki, our legal officer, to read out the statement, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement from Mr. Smith, who I believe is the agent. This application seeks permission for the redevelopment of the site, replacing an existing dilapidated bungalow out of keeping with the area, to provide a 3-bedroom detached dwelling with private external amenity, parking and landscaping. This process-driven, high-quality modern design provides a positive addition to Viking Close whilst still respecting the surrounding built form. The building's appearance has been developed to ensure that it sits well within the surroundings. The area benefits from a mix of architecture. There is no overriding style present. The proposal, using modern materials and constructions, is in keeping with the gradual architectural progression of the area and, more recently, the modern architecture behind the site on Minnis Road. The application site sits lower than the adjacent park and the larger dwellings behind on Minnis Road. The neighbour opposite, the green walkway, is significantly larger than the existing and proposed scheme. The proposed dwelling creates a transition in height across the street scenes that will be in keeping with the neighbouring buildings and sit comfortably within the larger built context. The proposed scheme positively defines the edge of the park whilst maintaining privacy to the site and all neighbours. A flat roof configuration is utilised to minimise building mass on the urban environment, removing any issues with loss of light or overshadowing. First floor windows to the northern boundary will be obscured following the case officer's recommendations to remove overlooking to the nearest building. The material palette respects the area and has been taken from buildings close by with their use of brick and render. This combination is of a common theme with varying colours of brick and render widely used. Green roofs are proposed on all the single-storey flat roofs. Parking is accommodated for on-site in front of the attached garage, with cycle storage incorporated inside the garage. The front garden, facing the park, will incorporate a mixture of native planting, providing a low-level buffer zone between the public and private spaces. The council raised that a tree with a TPO has been removed on the site. The tree was removed years before by a previous owner, and this was raised by the applicant prior to this application being made. Ongoing discussions concluded the need for the replanting of a sycamore tree. This has been agreed and included in the landscaping scheme. This application has had 9 letters of support from neighbours, highlighting the delight at this current eyesore site being tidied up and redeveloped. The proposal has encouraged the other building owners of Viking Close to update and smarten their existing buildings and frontages. Passing walkers have expressed their pleasure and delight upon seeing the huge improvements that have been made to the front of Viking Close outside this application, with a new driveway, low-level wall, secure railings and new planting, a significant improvement to its current substandard state. The applicant had a meeting with the one objector to the scheme and clarified the concerns raised, the materiality being clarified as render and the clearing of vegetation to the boundary clarified as outside this application and agreed by all residents of Viking Close. The clarifications provided removed the initial concerns raised. On this information and all supporting information provided for this application, it should be considered for approval. There now follows a statement by Mr. Blankley, which is objecting. Mr. Blankley says, Viking Close is a key component of the setting and context of the Green Man at Minnis Bay. The 3 1960s bungalows are of similar appearance and proportions, and together with Viking Lodge and Bay Cottage on Arthur Road, form part of the harmonious edges to the Green and the Dip. The Kent Design Guide is an adopted TDC policy and sets the criteria necessary for assessing planning applications. The proposed building, would be in multiple breach of this policy. The building would stand significantly, about 1 metre, taller than its neighbours on Viking Close and Arthur Road. It would result in overlooking of these and other properties in Minnis Road. Policy section 2.2.13 states that in most cases the best infill solution will involve following the existing building line and eaves line, even if contemporary in design. The roof will need to be arranged to ensure that the height of the ridges are kept in line with the surroundings. Massing of the bungalows on Viking Close is permeable and discreet. The building would present a prominent, bare, solid urban mass, destroying the unassuming presence of Viking Close. Policy section 2.2 states that the scale and massing of buildings must relate well to those of surrounding areas, and that new buildings should form a harmonious composition with surrounding buildings or landscape features in local views and vistas. The building is a modernist block design of brick faced with a mixture of render and timber cladding, and with large windows on the upper floor, having nothing in common with any other building around the green. This would present an intimidating and uncomfortable contrast to the surrounding conventional builds. Policy section 1.3 states that new development should build on local character, respecting the scale, landscape, style and detailing of surrounding areas. It should avoid a wide variety of building styles or mixture of materials. The green has a unique character formed by its setting and surroundings of traditional build, all with pitched tiled roofs. The proposed flat roof building would be out of character and alien to the green. Policy section 2.2.1 states that there is a strong need for the design of new buildings to enhance or at least maintain the predominant character where areas are subject to redevelopment. Section 2.4.2 states that infill developments will almost always be expected to harmonise with their context. The design and context of the building would make it a statement building. Policy section 2.2.13 states that new building proposals in established contexts should avoid bold, strong or iconic buildings. Good infill design is about providing careful repair and cohesion rather than making a statement. The green is an important part of the Minnis Bay character. There is a serious risk that, if approved, the building would set a precedent for more competing, taller statement buildings on its perimeter. Such development would destroy the character of the green and would be detrimental to the wider Minnis Bay character. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Suki. I want to ask Mr. Livingston, please, to give the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just present my screen. Okay, hopefully you can all see the map for this one. So the application site is outlined in red at 3 Viking Close. As already outlined, the application would demolish the existing bungalow and erect a 2-storey detached dwelling. So this is Viking Close here. The green that's already been mentioned is to the west of the site, where you've got Connaught Road and Minnis Road running parallel to each other, with Arthur Road running perpendicular to the site. So this is an aerial image. So this is the property that we're looking at today, number 3 here. So this is the bungalow itself, proposed to be demolished. So number 2 Viking Close is just on the left-hand side here. The property in the background here is number 8 Dane Road. So it's a development that's around the back of a property on Dane Road, off in the distance. This is the other view, so looking sort of towards the sea from the green itself. You can see, as mentioned, that the land level is slightly set down for these properties on Viking Close from the actual green itself. And you can see the style of these 3 bungalows in particular. You can see that number 1 has a front dormer window with a balcony on. You can also see in the background there are other properties in this part of Birchington. And then this is another part of the green that goes all the way down the flank elevation of number 3 Viking Close. You can also see to the rear here, number 167 Minnis Road, which is a 2-storey flat roof property. So just looking at some other views from down here. This is a view looking back towards the green. I appreciate it's a little bit dark because of the weather. On the right hand side here is the back of the application site. So number 3 on the right hand side of the image, and the back of number 8 Dane Road on the left. Then turning back around and looking towards Minnis Road, you can see a bit more of the back elevation of 167 Minnis Road on the left. And then looking back in a bit more detail at the existing bungalows, so you can see number 1, which is called Saxon Lodge, number 2, Viking Close, and then number 3 here. So just going to show you 2 views, one from Arthur Road looking towards the site, and another one from opposite over the other side of the green. So looking from Arthur Road, so the top of this image looking down towards the site, this is the gap between properties on Arthur Road. You can see the size of number 8 Dane Road here that we've been looking at, adjacent, which is close by to the site, and the roof of the existing bungalow number 3 is in this area here. So there is going to be some visibility from the proposal from this road, and obviously though you can see the context with number 8 there. Then looking across the green, you can see here quite clearly that sort of slight set down that these bungalows have, and then you can see again number 8 here, and the way that the bungalows sit adjacent to the green. And then those properties in the background as well that I've mentioned, that are slightly higher, the 3-storey properties that front Minnis Road. So the application site actually extends, and so it includes the front drive aspect of the sort of property on Viking Close. As you can see there was an existing garage, a single-storey structure at the front of the site, and you can see the bungalow sat slightly at an angle to the other bungalows along there to sort of to form a sort of end point for Viking Close. This is just a floor plan of the current bungalow, so it was a 2-bed bungalow, and then the roof plan. So the proposal, as mentioned, would be to construct a 2-storey flat roof property. It includes a single-storey garage at the front, so this is in the same location as the existing garage, but obviously extends directly from the main bulk of the property. So the design is, as mentioned, contemporary. It's flat roof in design with large glazed openings at first floor. There is a front balcony that is proposed on the property. It's brickwork proposed on the ground floor with 2 different forms of render on first floor, with some visualizations later on showing that sort of palette of materials in a bit more detail. Excuse me. So moving around then, this is the flank elevation fronting that access through the green space. So there's actually green space adjacent to the site, just showing the 2-storey extent of the building and the brick wall proposed along that boundary. And the rear elevation with 2 first floor windows, which we'll look at in a bit more detail in the coming slides. And then the flank elevation facing towards number 2 Viking Close. So these are the windows that were mentioned to be obscure glazed, these 3 windows here, and we'll look at which rooms they serve when we go through the floor plans. So onto the floor plans. On the ground floor, it's proposing open plan layout. Here's the garage that I mentioned. And then on the first floor, you have the balcony here at the front. And then on the side, you have 3 windows proposed to be obscure glazed or conditioned as such, mainly serving the 2 sort of bathrooms as well as a sort of dressing area. And then there are 2 windows at the rear. They both serve the 2 rear bedrooms. So it's a 3-bed property in total. And then this is the roof plan, again, just showing the sort of way that the first floor has been broken up in roof forms, with 2 sections of flat roof in the middle of the property, and then another 2 sort of wrapping around. So you can see here about the relationship with the neighbouring property. If I click through, so you've got the first floor layout on the block plan. So one of the issues that we've been looking at is the relationship between 167 at the rear and the first floor windows. In officers' opinion, the distance is sufficient from window to window and windows to some private amenity space of 26 metres. There is an interrelationship in terms of overlooking at the moment because of the first floor windows in number 167 with the rear garden of 3 Viking Close. But overall, in looking through the relationships in the area and looking at this specific relationship, it is considered that the proposed rear first floor windows wouldn't result in substantive overlooking to warrant refusal of the application. So in terms of the design of the property, this is a section showing the existing bungalow on the site. So you can see number 2 on the left-hand side here, Viking Close, and number 8 Dane Road on the right-hand side. So the proposal would result in an increase in the bulk at first floor level and an increase in the ridge height above the existing ridge height of the bungalow. You can see how the ridge height there compares with the neighbouring property at number 2, Viking Close, and also how it compares with the scale of 8 Dane Road as well. It's considered by officers that whilst it does increase the height of the ridge, the site, in our view, can support an increase in the scale of a dwelling on this site. Predominantly that's because of the open space surrounding it that does allow for it to not dominate the area or appear overly large because of the spacing around it. And also, obviously, there is a relationship with the built form that surrounds there, including those buildings that are very much in the context of the green, such as 8 Dane Road next door. So it is considered that the increase in height wouldn't result in significant harm to the character and appearance of the area. And it does provide a transition between the bungalows and the full 2-storey property at 8 Dane Road quite well. In terms of the side section, just showing the relationship with the property at the rear, 167. So you can see this is the 2-storey flat roof building as it is now, and of the neighbour, and on the left-hand side you've got the existing bungalow. So you can see that the height is comparable with the flat roof building to the rear, and you can then see that the relationship between the windows, as already mentioned, shown on the first floor plan. So the visualizations of the scheme that I mentioned, so these are 3D images. These are not being conditioned to be accorded with, but we have requested that there be a samples condition placed upon any permission to ensure that we get to assess the materials that come in. What this is proposing is to have brickwork at the ground floor with then 2 types of render at first floor, white render and sand coloured render, to break up the mass of the property. This is a visualization of showing that side, the rear elevation, of the application as proposed and the existing bulk represented on 167 on the right hand side. And this is a view just showing front on the relationship between the neighbouring property and the proposed development. In terms of the issue that's been raised in the officer report about the previous tree preservation order, as mentioned, there was a tree preservation order which was one of a number of trees that were individually protected within an order in the mid-90s. We don't have any records of any complaints on file that show when the tree that was covered by TPO around this location here was actually removed. And the report does look into the fact that what's been proposed here is not only a replacement individual sycamore, which is T1, which is here, but also it does include additional planting in the rear garden. So it is considered that that there is obviously a replacement tree that was removed before the current applicant was the owner of the property, and therefore overall it's not considered that there is detriment to the area at this stage and at this point in time from the proposed landscaping scheme, and it would obviously improve the current situation where that tree isn't present. So overall it is considered that the application would respond to certain characteristics of the area. We've obviously looked at the photos to show that there are flat roof buildings in close proximity to this property in the area, and it's considered by officers that the site can support the scale of property without appearing overly dominant or cramped and congested. and therefore the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you very much, Ian. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. Members, do you wish to debate? I have no names coming up on my screen. I've got hands. Yes. If you don't mind me asking, members, if you could just type your name in and I'll come to you. Some of the hands don't always show up on this screen that well. But Councillor Wright.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I do find that I won't be supporting this application. I'm afraid, Ian, I don't agree with your interpretation that it fits into the area. It is a very pretty little close. It's overbearing and belongs on an industrial estate. On an industrial estate, I would say it looks fabulous, but not in the little area that it is at the moment. It's overbearing and out of character. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Orban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the total opposite to Councillor Wright. Yes, it's totally and utterly modern building, but I think it sits in there. The materials to be used are reasonable and good. I can't see a problem with it, Chairman, to be honest, and I shall be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Did I see Councillor Rozeski's hand go up or not?
Wasn't me, Chair. Wasn't me.
Okay. Thank you, George. Okay. Councillor Keane.
Thank you. I find because of the building in Dane Road being so much larger, I don't find it overbearing and I would be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Joe Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. This is very difficult for me. I generally am supportive of progress, and I understand the change of style in an area. It is to be expected, but I have to say I do think it looks very odd there. It does look out of place. Not sure quite which way to go yet, but I do think it looks very much out of place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Do I have any other speakers? No. Okay, members, I will put this to you for the vote, if I may. And once again, I think we know now how this works. I will call your name out if you're for, against, or abstaining. So I will start with Councillor Coleman Cook.
Against.
Councillor Orban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
Against.
Councillor Curry. For. Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hart.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Patmore.
For.
Councillor Paul Moore.
Abstain.
Councillor Rozeski.
Abstain.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
Myself, I am for it. I believe that is carried. I shall see that will be it is. Thank you, James. The motion has been carried, members. Thank you. Agenda item 4C, which is the Eastcliff Bandstand on Wellington Crescent, Ramsgate. Once again, I'm going to call on our legal officer, Suki, to read out this public statement, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement from Miss Martin in favour of the application. Pioneering Places Ramsgate is an ambitious project delivered by Turner Contemporary. Since 2018, 80 local children have been leading it. They researched their town and identified the themes of play and playfulness, caring and modern machines as important to them in relation to Ramsgate. These themes formed a brief for artists, leading to the children interviewing and appointing Conrad Shawcross, RA, a renowned British artist exhibiting internationally, who already commands a great interest in his work. The children and Shawcross have been working on developing a temporary artwork, Beacons. The artwork comprises 4 structures, each a metal tripod supporting a coloured perforated disc. The materials reference those found in the surrounding area of the Royal Harbour, such as steel in shipbuilding, with the colours drawn from nautical flags. East Cliff Bandstand was chosen as it provides the perfect setting. It allows light to permeate through the perforated sails, so the outlook is never totally obscured, provides a dramatic view, and offers space so viewers can move freely whilst interacting with the structures. The artist was very conscious of the historic setting. Rather than creating something that blends in, he proposes a work which boldly stands out, whilst simultaneously channeling the children's themes. However, great consideration was given to the placement of the artworks in order to have minimal impact on residents' vistas, and the scale of the structures is in keeping with furniture in the vicinity. The design ensures no damage to the dance floor and no impression left following removal after 12 months. The artwork can be activated by the viewer by operating a handle to allow the sails to gently rotate, but it has also been designed to allow complete control in COVID-19 times, so there is an option to remove the handle. Whether moving or static, the artworks remain entirely silent. The supporting information displayed in vinyl signage will invite visitors to engage more deeply with the artwork. The bandstand is a hidden gem, presenting conditions for greater promotion. This commission provides an exceptional opportunity to create a new artwork inspired by the children's response to Ramsgate's multi-layered history, increasing interest in the site and huge potential to drive tourism to the town. It may also be useful in terms of a future bid for levelling up funds. As this is a place-making project which has been led by the creativity of local children, it will contribute to an increased civic pride throughout the whole community. A new interest in the area could lead to regeneration of the site with increased and varied use. The artwork will be linked with the series of sculptures being developed across the southeast as part of England's Creative Coast, promoted by Visit Kent this summer. The artwork itself is visually impactful and ever-changing. As its title, Beacons, suggests, it will act as a literal beacon for the site, drawing more to visit, enjoy time outside, and connect with Ramsgate, its past, present, and future, in a meaningful and inspiring way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Suki. Well presented there. I'm going to ask Ian if he could give his report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just present my screen again. Okay, hopefully you can all see the screen. So this application is the listed building consent application for the installation of the artwork that's proposed on a temporary basis. So the only consideration of this particular application is the direct impact on the East Cliff Bandstand as a listed structure, because it's where it's positioned physically on the hard standing that forms part of the listed curtilage. Now, the other application, which is not reserved for public speaking, but will be called out later by the clerk of the committee, would be the appropriate application to consider the impact on the conservation area, any other issues that members may have. But for this particular application, it's just the consideration of the impact on the listed building itself. So I'll just go through the presentation now. So we've got a site outlined in red. So we are on Wellington Crescent, in a very prominent part of Ramsgate. Members, I'm sure, will be aware that all the properties on Wellington Crescent are listed buildings, and the site does sit in the conservation area. The bandstand itself is listed, as well as, and you can see it here, the designed panels on the actual paving itself. So just going to look at some views of the site. So this is a view from Plains of Waterloo, looking directly to the bandstand. You can see some of the crane from the Pleasure Arms site behind, and you've got the street lights here. And moving through, you can see the crescent of Wellington Crescent in the background, and this is the bandstand itself. So the walls here and the railings are specifically cited in the listing as well. Then just looking, this is the promenade itself, so you can see the level change that occurs here. Just looking at the bandstand in more detail, and then the other angle of the bandstand looking the other direction, and then again the drop off. Sorry, it's a bit blurry on that photo. The drop off between the bandstand and the surrounding land and the actual prom itself. And this is a longer view. I appreciate the bandstand is sort of hidden behind the sun in this photo on the left hand side, but you can see quite clearly how the crescent is the dominating factor in terms of the bandstand and how the two structures sit together. And then this is just another view, again just showing the bandstand here from the other side of the road in front of the Wellington Crescent properties. So the proposal, as mentioned, is for 4 structures on tripod stands. They are proposed to be sited on these concrete pads. It's proposing that the structures are steel and have a large steel pole with circular discs on them. So as mentioned, I'll just click through to the next one, which may make a bit more sense. There are 4 of these that are proposed. It's already been outlined in the public speaking about the background behind these discs, and indeed the funding that's come forward for it. This is to look to celebrate maritime heritage of Ramsgate. It's been mentioned already that these discs, whilst being coloured, they will be able to be sort of turning around, and that will sort of almost reveal a code to relate back to the nautical flag theme and colours on the discs themselves. In terms of the structures itself, in terms of size, you're looking at overall height of about 8 metres, just a bit more than 8 metres, with a span of the actual discs themselves of about 3.6 metres, and it's about 5 metres to the sort of midpoint of the discs itself. So they are 8 metres in height generally. And going through, this is a visualization that's been provided of what they're going to look like. In terms of the impact on the listed building as the bandstand, it is considered by officers that there is harm to the character of the asset by virtue of placing structures like this on the listed structure itself, and obviously in relation to the listed bandstand. However, that impact is temporary. This is proposed only for a year. And also there are quite clear public benefits from the proposal in officers' views. One that's already been mentioned is obviously the potential for the project to actually increase the use of the space by providing something for people to come and look at, and indeed additional use of the bandstand itself. It also is about the principles that are enshrined in local plan policy to do with both listed buildings and generally to do with social interaction and inclusivity, and the potential tourism benefits that would accrue from having an art installation like this in this location. And it's therefore considered by officers that the temporary harm to the asset in this instance would be outweighed by the public benefits during the course of the installation in this instance. And therefore the recommendation on this application is for approval.
Thank you very much, Ian. Once again, I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coleman-Cook. I see that Councillor Alban wished to speak.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I called his applications in. The reason I called them in was because residents of Wellington Crescent had concerns in relation to looking out upon these artifacts and the effect that it might have on the bandstand. Personally, I fully support this art exhibition, whatever you want to call it. And as Mr. Livingston has said, it's there for a year. I think as well, in Ramsgate, we've now got a burgeoning artistic bent, for want of better words, and which is growing on quite a fast basis. So I think this is quite important for Ramsgate to have this, and I think it will bring the visitors up to see exactly what it is, because if they can see it from the beach, which they probably can, then the town can only benefit from it from that year for this year. So I'm fully supportive of it, Chair, and I hope the other members are as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Councillor Alban. Councillor Curry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Councillor Alban. I note that TDC Conservation Officer has raised no objection. I think there is a community benefit to this art installation. It's only temporary, and therefore I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jill Bayford.
Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I also support this application. I mean, I think it will be a benefit to the community. Anything that brings some cultural interest to the area, particularly on a temporary basis. So, you know, for anyone that doesn't like it, it's not there forever. I think should be encouraged, especially, you know, we've been through hard times. I think anything that brings tourists in, brings interest and colour to the area should be supported, and I'll be doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Wright.
The fact that the children have been everything everybody else has said, and the fact that the children have been involved in it, yeah, on that basis, yes, and it's only for a year, it's fine. What I would have suggested, I think it would be better though, and cause less impact, if there were two on either side of the bandstand rather than the four across the front. That would lessen the impact to the residents.
I think on that one, Councillor Wright, I can understand what you're saying there, but obviously this is the application once again we are looking at, and it has been, as you well know, looked into correctly. If I may, I think it is a good idea, and certainly I know the area with the bandstand. Yes, it needs brightening up there a little bit. My only one concern would be the wind, because it comes right across that channel. But that's not to say I'm, against this application. But I don't know whether Ian would like to come back on Councillor Wright's comment there. Ian.
Yeah, just I think it's part of the design to be sort of equidistant in terms of I think they're about 3 meters or 3.3 meters between each of them. So there's a symmetry to how it's been designed as part of the artwork. And again, I think from officers' perspective, it's acknowledged that this will be a visual change, certainly to the listed structure itself, but it is that balance of the temporary nature of it and the benefit that you accrue within that temporary period from hopefully, enhancement of the asset in its own way because of the additional use that will occur. So that's why it's being put forward on that basis.
Thank you, Ian. Okay, members, I don't see any other member wish to comment, so I'm putting this to you. If you're for, against, or you're abstaining, please let me know. Councillor Coleman Cook.
4.
Councillor Orban.
4.
Councillor Bayford.
4.
Councillor Curry.
4.
Councillor Dennis.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Hart.
4, Chair.
Councillor Keane.
4.
Councillor Patmore.
4.
Councillor Paul Moore.
4.
Councillor Rozeski.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
And I'm for as well, but that is unanimous. Thank you, members. And I think that's something we look forward to seeing, something completely different. Right, agenda item 4E, which is number 51 London Road, Ramsgate. Once again, I'm going to ask Suki, who I know has been looking forward to this one, to read out statements, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement in favour from Mr. Doug Brown, who's the applicant. He says, "Thanks, Chairman, for giving me the chance to give my point of view. First, some quotes. County Councillor Karen Constantine. It's wonderful. I absolutely love what you have done. It looks fantastic. Councillor Brenda Rogers. I pass your house regularly. Didn't know it was yours. And it cheers up the road without being brash. Jackie Williams, former Mayor of Ramsgate and former Chair of TDC Planning. The changes made have added colour and character to this property. We do hope that you find in favour as it gives so much pleasure." Other quotes. "It's a lovely house. So cheerful." And "How can someone object to that and not the solar house 2 doors down?" And "We live by the seaside. What's people's problem? They clearly haven't got any style." And "We love your house. When we walk past, it always makes us smile." Now, my thoughts. I live on a main road to Ramsgate seafront. The West Cliff is a stone's throw away. I want to promote the seaside town that I love. There should be colour and vibrancy. We should embrace that and make it brighter to encourage visitors. Design is very subjective. I have a degree in urban design paid for by TDC, so I do know a bit of what I am talking about. Sometimes it is safer as a planner to not take any risks so no one complains. One complaint can be dealt with by refusing an application rather than risking upset. Let the committee or appeal process deal with the problem. The planner can then say it is not my fault. Consider what you are dealing with. The house is not in a conservation area, and there are a wide variety of building styles in the area. The solar house 2 doors down is grey render, blue windows, grey cladding, a grey metal roof, and white UPVC conservatory. If anything, my house matches it. My house livens up the street in a good way. Please, members, you are all local, unlike many of your officers. You appreciate the privilege of living in our seaside towns. Let's celebrate that, rather than sticking to the usual suburbia that comprises so many of our modern residential estates. Also, please take note, only one objector and 17 letters of support, including support from my local councillors and hundreds of supporting comments on Love Ramsgate Facebook page. Do the good thing and allow more happy design in the district. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Suki. I call now upon Councillor Brenda Rogers. Brenda, are you there?
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Chairman and members.
Thank you.
I note there is one objection to this and 22 in support. There are numerous positive comments in support of this application on social media sites, including Facebook and Love Ramsgate, which far outweigh any negative remarks. The Isle of Thanet News had nearly 200 comments. This is not the only house in London Road with painted beach scenes on the exterior, and it seems a shame that one would be allowed and one wouldn't. Neither of these are unpleasant to look at, and in fact they bring a smile to people's faces as they pass them, particularly as they're both close to the seafront. This proposal has been the subject of consultation. People have been able to see what they're commenting on and made it clear that they like it. In light of favourable consultation results, would officers consider changing their recommendation? Surely this would be a democratic action, achieving what the public want. Can I ask why are the Ramsgate Heritage and Design Forum? Who are the Ramsgate Heritage and Design Forum? What is their status? Why have they commented on this application when they don't usually comment on anything in London Road? Did they volunteer a comment, or were they asked to comment by officers? If they were asked, why on this specific application? And I do go along with Mr. Brown. His house is far superior to the Breeze Block grey and blue house, which is totally not in keeping with the street scene. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rogers. Once again, I'm going to hand over to Mr. Livingston, please, to give his report.
Thank you, Chair. I will just present my screen on this one. Okay, so hopefully you should be, visible now.
Yep.
So the application is to retrospectively clad the front extension. This front extension was previously approved by the council. It's not proposed to make the extension any bigger. It's literally the materials on the extension itself. So the site is on London Road, as mentioned. It's on the corner with St Augustine's Park here, so outlined in red. So this is a view from St Augustine's Park, looking towards the front elevation, effectively, of 51 London Road. And then this is a view from directly adjacent on London Road of the extension. So then this is an image taken from Google. So it is slightly raised in terms of the level, just so that members are aware of exactly what they're looking at. But this is just to show the neighbouring properties in terms of the design of those properties, the materials used. And then this is another view also from Google Images, showing the neighbouring properties sort of further up St Augustine's Park, to show again the style of properties and the material palette. And then this is another view from Google, just showing again the extension and the balcony itself. So the extension of the balcony, that is a accordance in terms of the size of it with the planning permission, but it's the elements of cladding that have been added which require planning consent in this instance. And these are the elevations that have been provided with the application, showing the cladding. So in consideration by officers, it's about looking at the impact on the character and appearance of the area, and obviously, as I mentioned, the scale of the extension is considered to be acceptable. Originally, it was approved to be a rendered extension, which obviously, as we've seen, fit in the palette of materials in the area. And indeed, there is cladding in the vicinity of this particular site in St Augustine's Park, and all the way around that. It's a horseshoe type development that has two access points on London Road. There are other examples of white cladding found in the area. But it is considered that the proposed materials do fail to integrate with both the property and the character of the area in terms of the design and the contrasting colours that have been used. It does, and it is exacerbated by the prominent corner location of the property. And on that basis, it has been considered by officers to be incongruous and discordant in relation to the existing building. And therefore, when applying local plan policy about integration with the area, it is considered to be contrary to policy QD02, and therefore it is recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Once again, I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. Members, over to you. Do I have any members wish to speak?
Yeah.
Yes, can you? I don't think they're coming up on my screen.
It's Councillor Keane.
Beg your pardon, Councillor Keane. Yes, I'm just looking at the times as well. Please, yeah. Councillor Keane.
It's just something to ask, really. Can you go back, Ian, to the pictures and just show the picture at the front of the house again? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So let me just... So this is the view directly from St Augustine's Park, looking directly to the property. And then this is the view from the footpath on London Road, looking at the property. And then the other images are the Google images a bit further back, so giving a slightly elevated position in terms of what you would see. So you'd need to drop down slightly to know quite how much you'd see from this view. But this is the main images to consider of the property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Joel Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. This is really hard for me. I don't find it unattractive either, but as our speaker said, design is subjective. We're looking here at planning, at fitting in with the area, and I have to say it doesn't really. I have to think about. We have to think about future residents, and what one person likes and what another likes are two different matters. So I suppose what we look for is a design and colour scheme that suits most people. And pretty as I think it is, I do think it wouldn't suit everybody. So again, I'm not quite sure at this stage to go with this one. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. Do I have any other members wishing to comment? No. Okay, members. Once again, I'm coming to you. A slightly different situation here. Obviously, this is for refusal. So, if you are for refusal, please say for, or if you're against refusal, or you're abstaining. I think you know how it works by now. So, once again, Councillor Coleman Cook.
For.
Councillor Alban.
Abstain.
Councillor Bayford.
Abstain.
Councillor Curry.
Abstain.
Councillor Dennis. Councillor Dennis, are you still with us?
Abstain.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hart.
This is a difficult one, Chair. I'm going to go against, I think.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Patmore.
Against.
Councillor Paul Moore.
For.
Councillor Rozeski.
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, for.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And I'm going to abstain on this one as well. So I'm coming to James on that, please. There's a mixture there.
We've got a tie on this one, Chair, I'm afraid. For and 4 against.
For against.
Indeed.
Right. I know there's abstentions as well. Your guidance here, I think this is the first time this has happened to me in the last 2 years.
It has indeed. I wonder if people may, some of the abstentions may change their mind now they realise that it's so balanced. So perhaps if we did a recount, rerun through.
I have no problem with that. I mean, I will say this, if I may, to members, and obviously we have public who are listening. I haven't personally declared an interest in this item. I felt I didn't have to, but I do know of the applicant, Mr. Brown, because as most of you know, I've been on the authority for a number of years, and I do remember Mr. Brown being an employee on here, on the council. So I think it's only fair for him. And if I may, I'm going to say the same for Councillor Orban. If he shouts at me, I totally understand why. But it's not an actual declaration of interest. When you know somebody. So I'm going to stick to my guns, and I'm sure Councillor Orban will. Are there any other members wish to have a rethink?
Is it worth, Chair, simply doing a full re-vote?
Yes, I will.
Rather than individually. I'm just thinking just to start, sort of effectively to run it again on the basis of the situation that we have.
Okay. You've heard the situation there, members, and I hope you again accept what I've said to you, because I think it's only fair. But I will go through, and if you've changed your minds, please, obviously you will say so. But this is down as officers' refusal. Remember that. So if you are against, sort of say you know how it works. So Councillor Coleman Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban. Against. Abstain. Councillor Bayford.
For.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
Abstain.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Hart.
Against.
Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Patmore. Councillor Patmore.
Against. Sorry.
Don't worry. Push Councillor Paul Moore.
For.
Councillor Rzeski.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Myself, I'm abstain. Right, James. That has been carried. So the officer's recommendation has been carried, members. Thank you very much. I don't know whether Mr. Livingston wants to come back on anything there.
No, I think it's clear. Obviously, it's been outlined. Obviously, what the outcome is. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian. Thank you very much. Right on, members. Agenda item 4F, which is the outline planning permission for land of the west side of Top Hill Street in Minster. Once again, I'm going to ask our legal officer, Suki, to read out public speaking statements in favour and objecting to this application, and a statement from Minster Parish Council. Suki, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are 5 statements altogether. I'll read out first of all the statement of Mr. Hodgson, who's in favour of on behalf of the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee on behalf of the applicant. As the report states, this is an allocated site in the recently adopted Thanet local plan under policy HO10. Therefore, the principle of housing development of this site has already been established. The scheme will also provide 30% affordable housing in accordance with the local plan requirement. As defined in the local plan, Minster itself benefits from a range of services, including public houses, church, village hall, primary school, veterinary surgery, takeaways, butchers, convenience store, library, pharmacy, post office, and railway station, as well as others. The settlement consequently provides a range of services to meet the day-to-day needs of residents, as well as excellent access to services within larger settlements beyond. This includes the railway connections and bus services. This application will also see improvements made to the Tot Hill Street roundabout, as well as a new access to serve the development from Tot Hill Street in accordance with policy HO10. The illustrative layout indicates the design intentions for the scheme. The layout shows scope for significant areas of formal and informal open space, with a network of streets providing scope for much variety and occasions to create key landmark features and vistas. The scheme also indicates opportunities for a variety of street types, with adoptable routes reducing down to smaller, more intimate shared spaces. The application site will consequently provide a suitable amount of open space, which exceeds the local plan requirement as explained in the report. Whilst submitted in outline, consideration has also been taken of policy standards, such as relating to parking standards and open space provision. This approach ensures that the illustrative layout reflects space requirements and the principles identified are realistic and can result in a high-quality environment in which future occupiers can live. As part of the scheme, there will be financial contributions made towards education, healthcare, highways and ecology. The full list is set out in the committee report under the section Heads of Terms. We also wish to highlight that there are no objections from technical statutory consultees, including Highways, Natural England, Environmental Health and the Environment Agency. In conclusion, we endorse the officer's recommendation of approval for this scheme as it complies with all the relevant recently adopted local plan policies and will provide significant benefits in terms of housing provision and contributions towards community facilities. We trust members will be able to approve this scheme. Thank you. There is now a statement from Ms. Fairbrass, who is objecting. In the past, the Department of Environment rejected this application as it was on high-quality agricultural land in an area of special significance to agriculture and contrary to the Kent Structure Plan. Tuthill Street is often congested at present, and as this would result in an excess of 500 people and at least 400 more cars, the current road structure is inadequate. An emergency pedestrian and cycle access point is proposed in Greenhill Gardens, often used as a bypass to the village. This is at the bottom end, where there are 3 bends in the road within about 100 yards. The number of dwellings is out of all proportion to the development of the village. Existing properties are mostly bungalows. Where in Thanet would residents work, there is already high unemployment. At present, it is difficult to get an appointment with a doctor. Bus services are poor, and there is a problem of schooling. I strongly object to this proposal and would like this read out at the meeting. There now follows a statement by Mr. and Mrs. Portainer objecting. We are extremely concerned that the proposed development will have a detrimental and irreversible impact on our quality of life. The village cannot sustain 214 additional houses, and the whole character of the village will be threatened. We chose our home because of unspoilt views and assurances the land would never be built upon, as it is Grade 1 agricultural land. This site is still regularly used for agricultural purposes. Brownfield sites must be considered at a time when we need more sustainability. The site is rich in archaeology and home to protected wildlife. The development would cause us extensive loss of privacy and be a blight on our currently unspoilt views. Traffic and emissions are a major concern to us, as there would easily be an increase of 400 cars at a time when the government aims to reduce emissions. Within 200 metres of our house and the proposed site are 2 hotels, a service area, petrol station, supermarket, McDonald's and Costa Coffee. We already endure constant traffic throughout the day, which worsens at peak times. During rush hours, exiting our driveway onto Tuthill Street can take 15 to 20 minutes due to the traffic, exacerbated by vehicles and lorries exiting Laundry Road onto Tuthill Street, bringing traffic to a complete standstill. Emergency services struggle to get through. We started the school walking bus 21 years ago to reduce cars in the village. We regularly count at least 200 cars at the beginning and end of every school day, as most parents opt to drive, causing congestion throughout the village. It is a safety hazard crossing all roads en route to the school, and a further increase in traffic will risk the safety of children and adults. Minster School will not be able to expand its capacity sufficiently to deal with the increase in pupil numbers. People driving into Minster already struggle to park, as there is very limited parking and the village cannot physically take more cars. There will be additional strain on our already overburdened doctor surgery. We have gone from getting an appointment immediately to having to wait several weeks. The original proposal for 150 houses increased to 214 due to the loss of Manston Airport. As there is no guarantee the airport will reopen, would it not be prudent to await the outcome for Manston before such major development decisions are made? Antisocial behaviour has increased since the last large housing development in Minster. We are frequently disturbed and have been threatened by youths hanging around the bus shelter outside our house and suffered a burglary. This proposal will put enormous pressure on roads, school, doctor surgery, the water table and sewage drainage systems. Minster does not have an adequate infrastructure to cope, and the effect of the development will be devastating. We are very apprehensive that after 30 years of living in this beautiful rural environment, we will no longer feel comfortable, safe or secure living in Minster if this development goes ahead. There now follows a statement by Mr. Murray, who is objecting. Further to my letter of 29th April 2018, in which I raised 7 concerns regarding the above development, I should like to add the following objections based on the new documents submitted to Thanet Council. Clear overdevelopment of Minster. In the census of 2011, Minster Parish had 3,569 inhabitants. The above application requests 214 dwellings. With an expected occupancy rate of 1 to 5 persons per dwelling, this would equate to approximately 500 to 1,000 additional people living in Minster at the end of construction. This is a 14 to 28% increase in the number of people using its services, foul water treatment plant, school, doctor surgery, roads, etc. This increase is too large for Minster to cope with and will significantly damage life in the village. Inadequate plan to widen Tothill Road junction with roundabout. Tothill Street is the main access road in and out of Minster. From the plans submitted for the new junction, it is clear that they are inadequate. People living in the new development are likely to use 150 to 400 cars, motorbikes, cycles to move at peak hours to and from the development. Some will turn left at the proposed new junction with Tothill Street, while others will turn right into Minster Village, perhaps to take their children to the village school. This will cause enormous traffic jams in Tothill Street, leading to frustration and accidents. The proposed widened access of Tothill Street at the A299 roundabout will only allow an extra few cars, etc. to queue, so it will not grant free flow of traffic. A completely new and separate access road should be built from the northern part of the development to join the A299. Minster's wastewater treatment plant is inadequate. In Southern Water's letter of 22nd November 2018, it states that should the application receive planning consent, then construction of the development shall not commence until details of the proposed means of foul and surface water sewage disposal have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation with Southern Water. Although there was some limited upgrading of the foul water piping close to the sewerage plant when the last major development, FTH 071400 in Minster was completed in 2010. This is not adequate to take the outflow from the additional 214 dwellings. Significant investment is required so that Minster is not subjected to the previous regular outflow of raw sewage across the road junction by St Mary's Church and along Watchester Lane. Conclusions. I believe planning consent should not be granted because of clear overdevelopment of Minster. A proper detailed plan for foul and surface water sewerage disposal should be agreed before any further housing development in Minster. For any development at the proposed site, a completely new and separate access road should be built from its northern part to join the A299. And finally, there is a statement from Minster Parish Council. Minster Parish Council have opposed the development on this site since 2014, when the draft local plan was first published and sent out for consultation. Over 1,000 objections were submitted. We made further representation at the inspection process. It seems that none of our well-founded arguments have been acknowledged, as we are here today to consider an outline planning application for the development of this land. In short, the views of the landowners and Thanet District Council have taken precedence over those of the local residents. Many issues relating to this development have been raised since this application was first submitted, including loss of agricultural land, archaeology, water and sewage systems, medical and welfare services, and highways. After numerous exchanges with various organisations, these have been addressed, often by the promise of financial settlements, as set out in the report completed by your planning officer. Yet the overwhelming concerns for those who live in this area are much simpler. They relate to the huge overdevelopment of this rural community, the loss of landscape, the harm to the countryside, and the loss of the village gap. None of these can be solved by money. The villages in Thanet each pride themselves on their unique character and sense of community. This has never been more evident than in the recent periods of lockdown. This parish has seen considerable development over recent years, especially during the last few years, when there has been no 5-year housing supply. This has not been taken into account at all when considering the impact on this area. The addition of a site of 214 houses is the biggest single development in this village and will change its character completely. The community will be overwhelmed. Yet the conclusion must be that once Thanet District Council set upon a plan to build houses in numbers wholly unjustified by the evidence, then any planning application related to this site was predetermined. What is the value of public consultation? Lastly, the original consultation set out the inclusion in the Section 106 agreement of an area of land to extend Minster Cemetery, some small compensation for the imposition of this development. This section of the site cannot be built upon, therefore represents no cost to the landowners or developers. We note that the terms used in the Planning Officer's report refer to the sale of land to Minster Parish Council. I urge the committee to include in the agreement that this land is given to the community to ensure that at least our residents know that their final resting place is secure. We note the officers are asking for this decision to be deferred to them. Given the nature of this development and its significant impact on local residents, I ask that the final decision remains with the Planning Committee. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Suki, for that reading. I understand Councillor Rees, Ward Councillor Rees Pugh is there. Councillor Pugh.
Yes, hello Chair and hello Committee. Good evening and apologies for my lateness in joining the meeting. I think a lot of the concerns and the points that I'd like to raise, I think have already been raised by a number of residents in the Parish Council, so I will just summarise them quite quickly. For me, as one of the ward members, I was quite keen to ensure that this application was brought before you, and that's the reason why I called it in, mainly because it's such a large application, and it really does have the potential, well, I'm almost certain that it will completely transform Minster Village beyond recognition. Many of my concerns, and I'll be honest, they are quite a few, and this goes back to the beginning, is that not only has the applicant failed to, I believe, consult widely enough with the community. To the best of my recollection, I think the last time that they consulted with the community, I think was in 2019. As we all know, with the COVID-19 and the pandemic, a lot of things have changed since then, and particularly, I think, the type of housing that is needed for the village, for the villages, particularly Minster. We need houses that have bigger spaces, bigger rooms. A lot of people working from home now, so I think that isn't reflected within this application. But also as well, I'm incredibly concerned, and it's referenced with KCC as one of the consultees in their responses, that Minster School doesn't have the capacity to take on any new primary school children that will grow up in the village and need to go to a primary school from this as a result of this development. But they've estimated that up to 60 new primary school pupils will need to be educated within the local area. And even within the KCC report, it says that this will happen at the Manston Green Primary School in phase 1. Well, I mean, we all know that hasn't been built yet, and actually that leaves residents in Minster and these potential new residents at the mercy of a primary school that may not actually be built, or built in time and finished in time for this development, which is always the risk and always the worry. And quite honestly, it's my view that if the local primary school doesn't have room and has no way to expand and accommodate more children, then really any sizable development such as this should be refused alone on that basis. Also as well, and this is particularly a concern that is raised with me repeatedly from residents along Tothill Street, but also in the top of the rest of the village, there's such congestion as you come onto the main road, particularly around the roundabout. You know, many people, when they drive to work in the morning, you know, I've got many residents that live in Hill House Drive, just adjacent on the other side of Tothill Street to where this kind of access would be, the new access would be for this development. I have many residents that on their way to work, rather than as they exit Hill House Drive and turn right and then try and queue to get onto the roundabout to then go to work across Thanet, they turn left and they go all the way down Tothill Street. They go out of Minster through Monkton Road, and they then go through Monkton to get onto the A299, A249, the Monkton roundabout, to then be able to get to work. And I think, as a resident has said in one of their written submissions to the committee, you know, there are people queuing for at least 20 minutes to half an hour to try and get in and out of the village, particularly at peak times. So, you know, with the potential for this to have 300-400 more cars, you know, potentially coming in and out of the village at any one time, quite honestly, it fills me with dread. And I think it's for issues such as that the applicant hasn't really considered the needs of the local community. You know, this is an applicant that is seen an opportunity now that this land has been allocated in the local plan, and feels that it's their opportunity to cash in, when quite honestly, I think, as has been raised, it's grade 1 agricultural land. And as a ward member, I would urge the planning committee to seriously consider this application, and that rather than defer and delegate, I would urge you to refuse permission today on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. I now ask our planning officer, which is Emma Fibbins. Nice to see you today, Emma, somewhere, to give her report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, can you see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the application site outlined in red. So on the right-hand side of the screen, this is Tothill Street, running down from the Tothill Street roundabout. Below the site here, this is Fairfield Road, leading into Greenhill Gardens, and to the south here is Prospect Road. And then above the site to the north, you can see the A299. So part of the site is in the same ownership, but not within the application site. So the area in blue doesn't fall within the application site. So this is just showing the allocation. So the red line follows the allocation line for the housing site, other than the cemetery expansion area. So you can see this area here is proposed as being part of the expansion of the cemetery and falls within the red line, but this falls outside of the housing allocation site. So this area here is allocated in the Thanet local plan under policy HO10 for 250 units. The policy states that the development should have vehicular access onto Tothill Street. It should be provided with an emergency access. There should be highway improvements associated with the development, and open space should clearly be provided within it. And the average density suggested within the policy is up to 35 dwellings per hectare. So this is the application site in aerial view. So this is the area here, the darker area. So this area again to the north here isn't within the application site. It's just this L shape here. And this is Tothill Street running down the centre. And a closer view of that, again, Tothill Street running along here. This area here is the cemetery. So again, this area here would be the cemetery expansion area. To the north of the site here, you can see this is the listed building. So this is the closest listed building to the site, but is above the cemetery area. And here you can see the Tothill services with a petrol station and hotel and McDonald's. So this is just taking it from different angles. So again, Top Hill Street is running through the centre here. So the vehicular access into the site would be in approximately this location. And this is just taking it from the 8299, looking back into the site, again showing the relationship between the site and existing development in Minster. So the boundary of the site runs along this area here, where there's an existing bridleway. And again, the boundary of the development would run along this central part here, other than the cemetery expansion area. So these photos just show you a bit more detail of the site. So this photo is taken from Greenhill Gardens to the south. So this is the location of the proposed emergency vehicular access into the site. Oh, sorry. Again, this is just showing it again here. So again, the emergency vehicular access would be in this location, and here is the application site. So you can see it is currently in agricultural use. The line of vegetation along this boundary here, this is the location of the bridleway, and this would be the boundary of the site. So again, just going into the site, you can see existing development within the Greenhill Gardens. These are existing bungalows with quite shallow depth gardens. And then this is looking towards the west of the site. So this is the western boundary along here and the bridleway. And this is looking towards properties in Prospect Road and Prospect Gardens. And then again, just another view here. And then this is again looking back towards Prospect Road. And now this is looking towards Tot Hill Street. So the cemetery is on the left. To the right is Fairfield Road. And you can see there's vegetation along the current boundary. And then this is Tot Hill Street. So you can see the properties on the other side of Tot Hill Street. And again, the vehicular access onto Tot Hill Street would be approximately here. So this is in Tot Hill Street, looking towards the application site on the left. So the vehicular access would be approximately here. The bus stop is on the right-hand side of Tot Hill Street. And again, you can see existing development. And this is running up towards the roundabout towards the north. And this is now taken from the north, by the A299, looking south towards the application site. So this is the existing bridleway that runs along the western boundary of the site. And again, you can see the existing development in Prospect Road in the distance. So in terms of this public right-of-way, you can see it's currently an unmade track, but is used as part of the connection to the cycle network and for pedestrian use and equestrian. This again showing the boundary, looking towards the site. On the left here, you can see the cemetery. And this is showing the cycle link. So this is the current cycle link next to the A299, which links onto the bridleway, which runs down into Minster. And again, you can see the cemetery area here. And this is now taken on a slightly raised level. So behind me in this photo is the A299, and there's an embankment. So there's quite a change in ground level between the A299 and the site. So this is taken at a raised level, just showing you the difference in ground level. And then here you can see the A299. You can see that there's a landscaping buffer before reaching this secondary road that runs alongside here, which also has the cycle link. And then again, you can see the bridleway here. And in this distance here, you can see the listed hotel, which is the closest building to it. So the hotel is there, and the development would be on the far right of this screen. And this is just again showing, so this is not the application site now, this is further west, but just showing again the relationship between the road and the site and the existing vegetation that exists between them. So the application that's been submitted is not for the full 250 units, it's for 214 units, so it falls below the actual allocation number. It's in outline form, so the consideration is for the principle of the development for this number of units, and it's also for the vehicular accesses into the site. So all other matters are reserved. As part of the application, this parameter plan has been submitted, so this would be one of the approval plans. What this plan is showing is the green area here would be the cemetery expansion area. So this has been submitted because the original policy allocation policy for the site actually included a requirement to expand the cemetery. As the plan has gone through through the inspector, it was decided that there wasn't a need for this expansion, and the inspector removed this from the policy. So the policy now no longer requires an expansion of the cemetery. However, it's still being shown on the plan. So if the plan was to be approved, it would be approving the change of use of this land for cemetery expansion use, and then that would be available to the parish council, but it's understood that that would be for the parish council to purchase from the applicant rather than it being a requirement that this land is provided to the parish council. And there's not a requirement for us to be able to demand that through a legal agreement or through a condition, because it's not a policy requirement. But that's currently being still shown on that parameter plan. The area in pink is the archaeological exclusion zones. So from work that's taken place prior to the submission of the application, it's been found that the site is very rich in archaeology, and it's shown that there's a Roman trackway that runs through the site. So this long line here is the Roman trackway. North of this area, there's evidence of two small settlements, and there's also evidence of Bronze Age barrows, which are the circular areas, which are basically old burial grounds from the Bronze Age. So these areas have been found to be extremely important and not something that we would want to build over, and therefore they are shown on the plan as exclusion zones where development, actual physical development, cannot be constructed over it. The only exception is the vehicular access. So the vehicular access comes into the site here and would go over that exclusion zone at a single point, but that has been accepted by the archaeological officer. The area shown in yellow is an area that restricts the maximum height of development. So it's showing it as no more than 1.5 stories in height. So I'll just show you this plan in a bit more detail. So the reason for this is that the properties in Greenhill Gardens are bungalows. The gardens are quite shallow in depth, and therefore it's being considered when the applicant has considered the application prior to submission, that any development exceeding 1.5 stories could have a significant impact on them, and therefore this has been shown on the plan as being an area restricted in height to 1.5 stories, which basically would result in chalet style bungalows, therefore limiting impact on those properties. So this plan has also been submitted. This isn't a plan for approval, but it's just an indicative plan showing the amount of open space across the site. So the plan is showing that in terms of formal open space, which we would consider to cover amenity green space, allotment space and play space, that 0.57 hectares of this is being provided. This exceeds the 0.53 hectares that's required through the policy in the local plan. So that exceeds the minimum. And in terms of the informal open space, which covers the general landscaping, so this is the area that's lighter green around the edge of the site, this area is shown as being 4.12 hectares, which significantly exceeds the 0.92 hectares requirement within the policy. So the reasons for this has linked to the fact that there's been the archaeological exclusion zones. That's limited the amount of development that can actually fit onto the site, which is what has also led to the reduction in the unit numbers. So the 214 falling below the 250 is because you can't actually develop any of this area above here. And this area here, so this has limited that. So it's actually resulted in quite a low density development. The density, if you include the open space, the density is at 16.5 the density per hectare. But then if you excluded the open space, it would be 30. So it's actually below, again, the policy requirements. It's quite a low density development, which again is characteristic of a village location where it's surrounded by agricultural land. So actually quite a low density development is supported here. So this is the illustrative master plan that's been submitted with the scheme. So this plan is not for approval because the application is not considering layout or design, but it's showing how 214 units could fit on the site without causing harm. So what the plan is showing is, again, the fact that a low density development is achieved. It's showing that there's a mix of terraced, detached and semi-detached units that could be achieved across the site, whilst also retaining large areas of open space around the site. The unit sizes reflect the mix that's within policy SP22, which is our current need for unit sizes. So this would be addressing local need, and therefore that unit split would be acceptable. But again, we're not actually approving that at this stage, but this is what the Initiative Master Plan has been based on. In terms of impact on neighbours, again, there's no detail in terms of location, so it's difficult to actually fully assess any impact on neighbouring properties at this stage. But in terms of the distance, you can see this area here would be the area that would be the 1.5 storey high development, and you can see that it's possible to get quite a good distance to the neighbouring properties in order to avoid any overlooking. There's a distance of or the gardens of these properties in Greenhill Gardens is 16 to 20 metres. So with a garden depth beyond that, you'd easily be achieving at least 21 metres, if not more. For the properties in Fairfield Road, they have much deeper gardens of approximately 34 metres. So again, there should really be no real impact on privacy from these properties. I think one concern was to do with a potential from security because of the fact that there would be properties towards the rear of these gardens. And I think one condition that we've requested is to do with looking at boundary treatment that exists along these boundaries and making sure that the neighbouring properties would be secure and not have any detrimental impact from this development. It was mentioned in the planning statement that was submitted that development could be going up to 3 stories in height, and I think that quite a few objections I saw were in relation to this. We would be concerned with any development up to 3 story in height in a village location. That's not considered to be a suitable scale of development. So we have put suggested a condition that does limit any development up to 2 story in height up to eaves level. So it would allow potentially some accommodation at roof level, but would limit anything up to 2 stories to eaves level, which would prevent any scope for any 3-story development on the site. So this is just more zoomed in a plan showing the relationship with properties. So in terms of highways, as I mentioned, there will be this access here onto Top Hill Street on this point here, and there's an emergency access proposed at this point here onto Greenhill Gardens. So this plan here shows the proposed access onto Top Hill Street. It shows that adequate sight lines can be achieved, and it's also showing that there would be an uncontrolled crossing point located in this area here, which would allow for pedestrians from the development to cross the road and access the bus stop, which is located on this side of the road. And then in terms of the emergency access here, this is the plan for this. So it's showing that there would be retractable bollards positioned towards the centre of the access, which would allow for emergency vehicles to access the site should they require it. In terms of the mitigation from the development, the assessments that have been carried out, the transport assessments have shown that Top Hill Roundabout is at capacity already, and therefore any additional traffic from this development would be causing harm, and therefore mitigation works are required. The mitigation works that they're proposing is the widening of the arm to the roundabout. So this area here is a new lane leading onto the roundabout, which would allow for any additional queuing that would come from the development. It would allow that to be absorbed through the additional lane leading onto the roundabout. So this work would be carried out at the expense of the applicant and is required as part of the legal agreement, as well as the condition. The other issue was to do with the impact on this is just showing the overview of that actually. So the widening would be in this location here. So just beyond the access to the cemetery, this area here would be showing the additional lane leading onto the roundabout. And then in terms of the other junction that's where concern has been raised, the junction is here, so Spitfire Way. It's found that this is also at capacity at the moment. And so whilst vehicles coming out here would spread when reaching the roundabout, it's considered any additional impact from additional movements would actually be causing harm, and therefore a financial contribution has been requested. In this case, it's been determined that this should be £166,000, which will go towards improvements at the Spitfire Way junction as part of the highway strategy. The other aspect is the public right of way. So the bridleway that runs along the western side of this site, as you saw in the photos earlier, is an unmade track. Concern has been raised by KCC, the public right of ways officer, that any additional people using this track, which would probably be significant given the fact that the development is basically leading onto or right next to the track, it would cause problems with that track, given the fact it's an unmade track, and it would cause damage to it. And this is quite an important link given the fact that the cycle network extends onto it, and it's a main footpath link. So as part of the application, it's been requested that the surfacing of that bridleway, the full length of the bridleway, takes place as part of the development. So that would be a hard surfaced 3 metre width running through from the A299 onto Prospect Road to the south. And that would then significantly improve pedestrian links, cycle links, and would enable equestrian movement as well. So that is also proposed as part of the legal agreement. And again, that's just the photo again showing you the existing track. So that would be made 3 metres wide and hard surfaced. So in terms of the general development, it's been mentioned about the fact that the site is agricultural land and grade 1. Unfortunately, quite a lot of agricultural land within Thanet is at that level. The site is, however, allocated for housing, and therefore the benefits of housing development on the site and the benefits that come from that would override the fact that it is grade 1 agricultural land, the fact that it is an allocation site. In terms of the impact on the surrounding area, the site now falls within the urban areas. The boundary of Minster Village has changed to include this as part of the village confines. However, the site does still fall within the landscape character area. So in terms of views through towards Pegwell Bay in the distance, a landscape assessment has been submitted. Obviously, it's quite an open site, as you saw from the photo. So the development of the site will be causing some visual impact as a result of that. However, the main views, which will be from the A299 looking south towards the site, there would be a backdrop of existing development around the site. So in terms of long views, the harm would actually be limited because of that. In addition, a landscape strategy has been submitted. This again is not a plan for approval because we don't currently have the layout being proposed, but this shows what could be achieved on the site. So this is Tot Hill Street running along to the north. So the A299 would be to the left here. The yellow dots are the bridleway, and it just shows what could be achieved with the open space, the fact that there could be native tree planting along the site, hedge planting. There can be large areas this area here is showing the potential drainage solutions for the site, which would allow for infiltration into the site, and it shows potential links through onto pedestrian links as well. So it's showing that there would be the ability to create some screening of the development and some softening of the development through the strengthening of these boundary areas. So the other issues to do with affordable housing. So with the applications originally submitted, viability was raised as a concern with the fact that with all the off-site highway mitigation works that were required, there was concern that affordable housing in full could not be achieved on the site, and it was suggested that only 12% affordable housing could be achieved. After a lot of negotiation and an independent review of the viability assessment that was submitted, this has now been raised up to the 30%, so now meets policy requirement. That it does allow for 60% of the units to be affordable rent, rather than historically we would have asked for 70%, but our strategic housing officer has no concerns with that. So 30% would be achieved on site. Again, we have no further details of that at this stage, and that would come in as part of the reserve matters. In terms of other issues, there's no concerns with biodiversity, so no protected species were identified on the site. In terms of the drainage, it would be aiming to achieve infiltration through drainage on the site. And again, we've had no concerns raised by consultees who are happy at the moment that that would be a good strategy for the site, and that this would just be dealt with further at the reserve matter stage once we understand the layout. In terms of financial contributions, you can see in the report there's a long list of financial contributions that would be being proposed. 144,000 would be going towards Minster surgery to help to improve the surgery and make increased capacity to accommodate the additional people on the site. In terms of the primary school contribution, I know this was mentioned earlier. Currently, it's suggested that this would go towards the new Manston Green Primary School. Unfortunately, the Minster School at the moment doesn't have the capacity to expand. There's no space on the site to expand, so it's just not possible for the contribution to go towards Minster Primary School. In terms of the Manston Green site, it's still an extant consent. The first phase has been approved, and therefore we are expecting that site will still be developed and the school will come forward, and that will be adequate to serve pupils from this site. Alternatively, there's Birchington Primary School, which is probably the second closest or the current closest school other than Minster to the site. And lots of extension works have taken place at that school as well, so there would be potentially scope there. I think in the past, KCC have advised that by expanding other schools, it actually allows capacity for people outside the area to actually go to those schools, increasing capacity in Minster for pupils, because from what I understand, there are people that come to the Minster school from actually outside the village. So by increasing capacity elsewhere, that would actually still help the village. So other contributions have been proposed as a secondary school contribution, and then a number of other KCC contributions. So overall, the proposal does comply with policy. It falls below the allocation number and results in quite a low density scheme, which is not considered to be significantly harmful to the surrounding area, given the fact there'll be lots of landscaping to help screen the development. And whilst there will be harm from the additional vehicles, this is mitigated through the Tothill Street roundabout improvement and the mitigation through the offsite contributions for Spitfire Junction. And so on balance, the benefits from this scheme are considered to outweigh any harm, and therefore it's recommended that, subject to the submission of the legal agreement securing the contributions and mitigation works, that it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. I have speakers. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. As most of you will know, this falls in my remit. It's one of my wards and one of my villages in my ward. I think Emma did a very good job of trying to talk everybody out of actually agreeing to this development, because I think the only benefit she put forward, a bit of cash coming out to go to other areas. If you go to Minster, I don't know how many of you do, it is absolutely hideous to get out of the place and into the place sometimes. You are queuing forever. And just putting another parking area for you to get out and wait to get onto the roundabout is really just unbelievable. Because otherwise you just will never get out. And even you just park there, it's another 20-minute wait. It doesn't make any difference. I am concerned it will change the whole village. And it's not in the right place. We all know there's got to be planning. We all know there's got to be more houses built, but this is not the right place to build those houses. The school, as Emma agreed, doesn't have capacity. Where they think they could put them hasn't been built, hasn't been improved. So where are all these people going to go to school? And I just think that it's not a well thought out plan. It's not in the right place. You can't try and get 240 odd houses or 250, over 200 houses in an area where you can't get in and out of. And just to have a little bit extra, and we'll have a little post that comes up and down for emergency vehicles that can't get there because they're queuing, or they can't get out because there's queuing, is an absolute disgrace. And I don't think that this is a well thought out plan, and I don't think it at all should be agreed by planning. If it's going to be approved in any way, shape or form, it should actually come back to committee rather than just be agreed by the planning officers. And that's my opinion. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Ian, I see you wish to come back on this.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to come back on a couple of points. Obviously, this is an allocated housing site. So the consideration about how sustainable the site is as a housing site has been determined through the local plan examination process. So that principal issue has already been resolved and been adopted by this council. And it's not a matter for a planning application to redo the allocation process. I think it's just really, really important to state that up front. So yeah, I just wanted to put that point across at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. And
can I come back, Chair, on that?
Yes, Councillor Hart, yes.
Thank you. I understand what Ian's saying. As I said, we know it's been agreed as an allocated site. I mean, the issue I have, as many ward councillors will have in their own areas, and has been put forward by KCC, has been put forward by Minster Parish Council, and Emma did a very good job of saying it's not sustainable as a site, is that we agree that has been agreed. There's nothing we can do about that, but it will not take that number of houses. If they want to put a housing allocation onto that site, maybe they could put 10 or 20, but not over 200 houses, because the infrastructure isn't there. Okay, there's a station. They're not going to walk the 1.5 miles down to the station. They're going to drive, which means they're going to have to come back at some stage. There's no real transport links at the top of the road, buses, etc. There's no place for the people to go to the medical centre at the present time, let alone with another 200 plus houses. There's nowhere for the children to go to school. And it's just an unviable product. And I cannot state enough. Yes, it's an agreed point. It's an agreed area to put houses on, but it won't take that many. If you want to put 50 on there or 20 on there, fine, but not 240 odd. I mean, it's just not sustainable. Even the drainage isn't sustainable. And they've taken away the expansion of the cemetery. They're doing nothing to actually enhance the area at all. And I just think it's a great shame to do this. It's just going to cause absolute dread. People just won't be able to get out of the village. I mean, it's just crazy. You can't get out now, let alone get in. So that's just my comments. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. I mean, I think I have to say this. I mean, it's been mentioned by the officers that, you know, this is part of the new local plan, allocated, the numbers of houses. Okay, that's been looked at, and we have to take what officers are stating to us. And I know we have every right. That's what we're here for tonight, to discuss our thoughts and whether we agree or not agree. But I think, you know, we've got some plans coming up, one next week, which are going to be very big, and obviously a lot of debate will take place. But I think we've all got to remember that if this is in the local plan, these sites are in the local plan, we have to consider that. And I'm not asking you, I wouldn't dream of it, as I've said on the odd occasion before, to agree or not agree. That is your decisions. But I think, if I may, it's a bit of an important point. So, and I have got other speakers, but I think Ian would like to come back, members.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to labour the point, because I think, I absolutely understand Councillor Hart's position as a member of the committee. I think just to reiterate that obviously the site is allocated for up to 250 houses, and obviously in this instance it's come forward for less because there are specific reasons on site why they can't provide 250 houses, which the site is allocated for. I did just want to pick up, and this was covered in Emma's presentation, and there may be further comments on this, the point with regards to the school and the capacity of the school, because the point that's being made by KCC is that there is, in terms of a contribution, which every development of a certain scale is expected to make towards the provision of new sort of school places through expansion projects, that doesn't necessarily mean that year on year there are capacity issues at Minster Primary School that would mean that the people in this, the families in this site would not be able to attend Minster Primary School. It's to say that the money from this development couldn't go to Minster Primary School because there is no projects to expand that school. And there is a clear difference there That's a different thing from saying that when these houses are built, that there wouldn't be any space for the children at that school. And as Emma's already outlined, expansion of other schools outside of Minster creates capacity outside of Minster, and indeed an oversubscription policy, of which I believe Minster Parish Council uses the KCC oversubscription policy, would mean that one of those policies for when the school is oversubscribed relates to how close you are to the school itself, and obviously therefore people in Minster would be prioritised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Right, I have other speakers. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is an interesting debate, and I have to say that obviously the local plan, this scheme was, this land was put into the local plan for up to 250 houses. So, and the council, us as councillors, have approved that. So this site is to be used for development for houses. However, whilst that is agreed and is part of and gone through a due process, it is the intricacies of the development that takes place which is going to cause the problems. I've got family in Minster. I go down on a regular basis, and I totally agree with Councillor Hart, and I totally agree with Councillor Pugh. It is a bit of a nightmare, even on a less busy day. It is difficult because of the parking there. So you've got to weave your way up in and out. So my concerns in listening to this was, one, on the highway issues, and two, on the school. But I've listened to what the officers have said, and it's down to Kent County Council to ensure that there are enough places and there are enough school places for developments like this to take place, and for the children that may live on this site to be accommodated elsewhere if they can't get into Minster. My other concern is the access into in and out of the site. Now, it would seem to me to be folly for traffic to be able to turn right out of this development site to go down into the town, down into the village. They should turn left, go up and go around the roundabout and then come back down. Also, what concerns me as well is that a pedestrian access is to be put in going across Tothill Street to allow, obviously, residents on foot to gain access to the bus stop there. I think that needs to be looked at. That needs to be looked at as to whether they should be able to get a bridge across, because that in turn will stop traffic. So whilst I'm willing to support the outline consent for housing on the site, I do think that there are issues coming from that which need to be further looked into and determined to ensure that the general life of the villagers doesn't get any more detriment than what it's got at the present time in relation to traffic, schools and other things. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Alban. A lot of that obviously makes sense. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Alban has actually articulated many of the things I wanted to say. I fully understand that the site is allocated for housing. I understand the number of houses that it's allocated for. There are a lot of positives, I have to say, that the dwellings are limited to 2 stories, the financial contributions, the percentage of affordable housing. However, I fully respect the effect this will have on the village and the villagers. And I think for that reason, the number of unanswered questions related to schooling, highways, things like, I think there are too many unanswered questions at this stage. I feel these things need to be firmed up. Maybe there needs to be further consultation, I don't know. But I feel that it is a little bit early at this stage to agree to this application in its current form. I don't know if there is any way that this could be further deferred in order to find solutions to these issues. But I personally feel uncomfortable at this stage in agreeing to something which has such a vast effect on the local people and has so many unanswered questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Paulmore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, am I being rather naive here? The proposal is to defer this application to the planning officers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So that's all we're voting for. What we're saying is, if we don't agree with that, then it will come back to this committee for further discussions where we can deal with all the points that have been raised.
Councillor Moore, I'm going to stop you there because I can see that Councillor, I've done it again, Ian, but I don't want to put you through that. But I think Mr. Livingston can come back on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is to defer and delegate for approval. So the members are making the decision about whether or not this application gets approved or not. But it's deferred back specifically for us to finalise the legal agreement to secure all of the planning obligations that are outlined in the heads of terms in the report. So if that motion that's been put before members falls, then it would be for members to propose an alternative motion. Obviously, as normal, I would advise on that if that was the way it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for that. If you're quite happy with that, Councillor Moore, yes?
Yes, thank you, Ian, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm going to be repeating a bit what the others have said, so I'll keep it brief. I fully understand the site's already approved and the numbers and that, so that goes ahead. But my real concern is about the traffic. I used to work in Minster, I know it well, and I can't imagine that what has been shown to us tonight is going to be enough to ameliorate the effects of that number of houses. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Keane. I can't see any other speakers. I can, yes. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit of a late entry into the discussion, and I won't take a long time because a number of councillors have already outlined concerns that I share with this application. One other concern I share, I haven't been assured about the amount of affordable housing that is going to end up being provided on this site when it does finally gain permission. I've heard it stated that after an assessment, it was thought to be 12%, and then following negotiations, that was moved up to the 30%, as it should be. I just want to make it clear, I would have grave concerns, if not worse, if this came back at any future date and that 30% was reduced by any amount. It needs to stay at 30%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I don't know whether Emma wants to just comment on that. Emma.
Yeah, so the proposal is currently for the 30%, and it's proposed that would be secured within the legal agreement. So yes, they originally proposed 12%. We've gone back and forth. We've reviewed it through the viability assessment, and it's been found that they could actually achieve 30% on the site whilst the site remains viable. So that is now to be secured through the legal agreement. So there's no scope for them to come back and reduce that at this point, because we are now proposing that 30% would be would be achieved on site, and that would be in the legal agreement requiring details through the reserve matters of where that is and what size those units would be. So yes, that there's no concern there with that element. And can I just comment on the other points being raised? I think members have mentioned quite a few unanswered questions with this. In terms of the highway impacts, again, I can understand the concerns that members are raising with it. It is difficult sometimes getting into the village, but the proposal for this development is in the north of the village, so it's probably actually the best location in terms of the impacts on highways, because most vehicles would come out of this site and immediately turn left onto the roundabout. I appreciate you're saying that some people may drive down to the station and some people may want to drive to the school, but a development in this location, in my view, is going to be better than something further south, right in the middle of the centre of the village, because people could come straight out of this development straight onto the roundabout, and the mitigation works are obviously seeking to improve the roundabout and widen that, so that highways have raised no objections to this scheme now. So there's no concerns raised by them following the submission of all the transport assessments and additional information that they've requested. They've asked for lots of additional information. They've asked for the crossing point and things like that. So following lots of negotiation back and forth, KCC Highways now raise no objections to the scheme and consider it to be acceptable following the securing of these mitigation works through the legal agreement and this financial contribution for the Spitfire Junction. So, and in terms of the school, I think we did cover this point earlier. I appreciate it's difficult suggesting that the money will go to a school that doesn't currently exist, and therefore I can see your concern that if that school isn't built, there could be an issue. But again, that from development coming forward, development will provide contributions to schools, and eventually they will come forward. And there are other schools that can accommodate children. There's the Birchton School. There's, as we said, the Minster School would get priority for any children in this development. And so again, I don't feel, in terms of there being unanswered questions, there's nothing more I can seek in terms of information on those issues. So I just wanted to
thank you very much for that, Emma. Yes, I can see your concerns here as well, but I think you've answered them well there. Councillor Alban, you wish to come back?
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you. As much as Kent County Council Highways may not have an issue, they don't believe that, as Emma has pointed out, that they have an issue with the highways. But unfortunately, we do, and we have a considerable issue regarding this. Could I ask Mr. Livingston that, as far as personally, I want to support this application, but with reservations. So I would need surety that the highway issues can be reviewed and can be looked at, and if not, then I think would have to go against this would go against the motion. Would be to go against the recommendation, and for this matter to come back to members for consideration instead of officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Again, I can see, exactly what you're saying. I will go over to Ian. If you may, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. So I suppose to reiterate the points that Emma's made, but also in response to Councillor Alban, to your points there. The way that the transport assessment works in this instance obviously has been that there's been work done looking at trip generation, looking at junction capacity, looking at modelling where traffic will go out of there, out of that new access. And as Emma mentioned, this has been an application that's been with the authority for over 2 years, and all of that has been dealing with the negotiation over multiple factors, including concerns from KCC Highways. Obviously, in that time, this site has been allocated, and I know I don't want to bang on about it, but the important point here is about the sustainability of the site. The site has been assessed and been agreed by this council as sustainable. But as Emma's also said, I can understand the concerns because I think everyone has travelled down Tot Hill Street and knows that it can get rather busy because of parked cars on either side. The point about this site, as Emma mentions, is that it is of the village sort of expansion sites and the allocations that have come forward. It has got that direct route out and onto the main highway network. It does obviously have good pedestrian links to the south, obviously some of which are provided through the actual site itself to go to the south, that would then go down to the high street of Minster. So it's got pedestrian links on that way. And I think to come to the key bit about KCC highways, whilst I understand members are concerned because of their own experience and what is effectively, though, anecdotal evidence, the point here is that KCC highways, the professional expertise which they give us is whether or not there is a severe harm to the network. If KCC haven't objected, and that is on the basis of quite a significant package of mitigation works, then there is no evidence to suggest that the capacity of the highway network could not support this housing development. In terms of, if members are not satisfied with the information that's been provided, then it is something. Obviously, this is an allocated site, and in our view, there aren't grounds to refuse this application on the impact on the highway network. There's no evidence to suggest, in contrary to the KCC Highways view, to refuse it on that basis. If members, though, do not vote for the motion, then we would have to look at what information we could get and what input we can get from highways to provide any further reassurance about the impact. But as Emma's outlined, the information is clearly outlined in the report. It's provided all the information about that. And I know members will have looked at that and will obviously see online the comments from KCC Highways as well, going into a lot of detail about the evidence that's been provided. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Ian. And yes, I have. I mean, looking at the report, which I'm sure we all do, there is quite a bit. Totally understand, again, the concerns on this, but I appreciate Mr. Livingston giving us about, and I'm saying this obviously, and if members can take this on board, they've come back with their answers, and it has taken some time to do that. And I think we do, we really have to respect that. Councillor Hart, you wish to come back? David?
Sorry, Mick. I believe Councillor Hart has accidentally left the meeting when he's tried to unmute himself. Apologies. There he is. He's back. There we go. Councillor Hart, everyone.
Oh, sorry about that, boys and girls. Yeah, I understand. I am very, very sorry. I hit the cut off rather than the mic.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
I understand with Mr. Livingston's point of view, and I understand Emma's point of view. We're all grown-ups here, and we all hopefully have been through Tot Hill Street, and we've all tried to get down there at 8:30 in the morning, or tried to get up, and again at 4:30, 4:45. You cannot get out of that street for 20 minutes, half an hour sometimes. I've been stuck there for longer than that once. The issue I have is that it's not only about the road network, which is appalling, absolutely appalling, because where that is situated, if a car wants to go right into the estate, coming down from the roundabout, people aren't necessarily going to leave that junction free. You can put a yellow box on it if you have to, or whatever. They could be queuing up there, then they hit the roundabout, and then that causes chaos further on. If you want to try and get out with another 240 whatever houses it is, or over 200 houses, you could have another 200-300 cars trying to just get down that road. But it's not only about the traffic issues here, Ian. I mean, we've had a pandemic. Apparently, there's going to be a baby boom because of it, which is going to put even more pressure on schools, more pressures on road, more pressures on everything else, including the medical services down there, which are very good, I understand. It's not just the road that's the issue here. It's the fact that it's too many houses in one place with very limited access. So you've got over 200 houses coming into one road. It's not the fact that they can come out of another exit or join from the main road. It's just the whole group of things that Emma described very well, but was really putting forward ideas that it wasn't a sustainable site for that many properties, which I think she did very well. And I think every councillor should be grateful to her of in the ward, that it's just not sustainable. And I think that realistically to allow officers to agree this just in principle is not the right way to go. I think it's got to come back to to committee, sorry.
Thank you, that Councillor Hart. I mean, it's been a very good debate on this, and listening some very valid points. But once again, we look at the local plan. It was us that agreed the local plan, and this site obviously was allocated for houses, and as you gather, it was allocated for more houses than the application is, for. And I totally understand your concerns, Councillor Hart. I don't want to stop. I wouldn't dream of stopping anyone, but I think with the road network, again, we've got to go along with what KCC has said at this stage. I don't live in Minster, but I have been there. I have travelled out of Margate, and I totally understand the junction is horrendous at times. I'd like members to think on that. A lot of work has gone on before this has come to us tonight. We must think about that. Councillor Garner.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was just to confirm. I mean, obviously, this has got to, if this does pass, then there's got to be in the next 3 years an application come back that deals with the reserved matters.
Yes.
So that to be considered. And there's, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing stopping that being called into planning committee to be considered by us then, is there?
No, I mean, you're right, Councillor Garner. I mean, listening to all the views about everything on this application, it's not for me to prejudge, but it may well come back to committee on some item about this application. We have seen that before on numerous occasions over the island, and we'll be open about it. And I think that is the way we should work, and I think we all know that on the committee. But I think, looking tonight, obviously I'm going to put this to the vote in a few minutes. We must consider what's in front of us on the agenda tonight, which I'm going to do because I have no more speakers, and I say it has been an excellent debate. Members, I'm going to put this to you now. Obviously, we'll now vote on the officer's recommendation, which is defer and delegate. You are aware how this works now. If you're for the motion, please say it, or against, or if you're abstaining. I know Councillor Patmore has had to leave because I understand there's a Ramsgate Town Council meeting tonight. So I'll go through the names. Councillor Coleman Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban.
Yeah, on balance, Chair, it'll be 4, be it on KCC's head.
Thank you. Councillor Bayford.
Yes, ditto, 4.
Councillor Curry.
4.
Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, Chair, although I agree we haven't got the infrastructure, 4.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Hart.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Paul Moore.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Rozeski. Councillor Rozeski.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
4. Sorry, against.
Right, I'm for it. I'm coming over to James. I think that has been, it has. Thank you, members. So an excellent debate there. That has been carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on once again, members. That is concludes public speaking for this meeting. I will call upon the clerk, which is James, to read out the remaining planning applications. If a member wishes to reserve the application, will they please call out and let me know, or let James know. Over to you, James.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the remaining two items are agenda item 4B, which is the application ending 1699, Eastcliff Bandstand, Wellington Crescent, Ramsgate. And the other item is 4D, which is 13 Linden Avenue, Broadstairs.
I'd like to discuss that one, please. Jill Bayford.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford. But on the other item, could I just have the officer's recommendation there? Where are we? That was Eastcliff Bandstand. A proposer that you're happy with that? And
I'll propose approval, Chair. Thank you.
And a seconder?
Chair.
Yeah, thank you. All agreed?
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay, thank you. Okay, so moving on to the item which has been reserved, which is, as I say, is number 13 Linden Avenue. I move that the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could I have Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. I believe it's Ian.
It is, yeah. I'll just go through the slides, Chair, just so you can see the
thank you
the proposal. So members will recall this site, 13 Linden Avenue, for the development of this site here. It previously has come before members for the development of two new houses and alterations to number 13 Linden Avenue itself. So this is 13 Linden Avenue here. This application is a variation of condition application. So members refused a previous variation of condition application, which related to changes to a couple of the dwellings that were approved, that were fronting the two roads. This particular variation is to enlarge plot 3 of the development, which is the house that you can see in front of you. So it has been built. So I'm just going to show you the changes that have been made from the approval to what's actually now been built and that they've now retrospectively applied to regularise. So this is the property itself. The element of interest is on the side elevation here. You can see there's a roof light that's been inserted into this, that sort of side element. And this is the dwelling behind, and the site of the house yet to be built is here. So this is the layout as proposed, and the bit that's proposed is a change to the rear of number 3 here. So if I click through to this plan, this is the approved plan for plot 3. The section in red is what's changed. So it's meant that the two-story side element, or sorry, single story but with rooms in the roof, has basically been extended back to meet the rear wall of the property. So you can see here on the ground floor plan that it's now got a single linear rear elevation all the way along, and there is some, because of the fact that the pitch has got a bit higher because it's got deeper, there's the ability that they've put an ensuite bathroom into that roof accommodation, and this is the roof plan showing the Velux window. So the elevations, and obviously you've seen the actual photos themselves, just to show. So this is the element here which is altered, this bit at the back, and those are the elevations through. So the materials that have been put forward, obviously members have seen the photo. but the materials are shown on this slide here. So you've got cream cladding and you've got some bricks as well as the render. The important thing about this application is it's just varying that element. All of the provisions on the rest of the development, it would still be required to be accorded with as previously submitted. And there's some more additional details of the materials that have been submitted for the overall development as well. So in conclusion, the officer recommendation is for approval of this variation on the grounds that it doesn't cause harm to the character and appearance of the area, and whilst it is a minor material amendment to the proposal, hence needing to the approval, hence needing a variation of condition, it doesn't result in a significant increase in the built form to warrant refusal, and therefore it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted, and that's for approval. Vice Chair, please second.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman-Cook. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. I called this in not as the private planning statement says for no reason, but because when we discussed this before, the last application was refused on the grounds that I think the reasons recorded were that it was felt that the permission granted was for the maximum bulk and scale acceptable on that site, which is very, very cramped. I accept that the changes are not huge. I am aware that there is a I realise we're not listening to this tonight, but there is another application, another variation coming in on this same site, and we thought that it was cramped enough as it was. It shouldn't be made any bigger, and then we're faced suddenly with a retrospective or part retrospective application for it to be made bigger. I don't know how this has happened or how this can happen, but I'd be interested to hear. Sorry.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, just for Councillor Bayford, this does happen. Happens on a quite regular basis where people put plans in, then they want to change them, and they do that. And sometimes work takes place, and then a retrospective application is put in. I note on the report that there are no objections at all from any residents. What's been done is quite small. It has no impact anywhere on anybody. And should we refuse it, will the council take enforcement action over this to make them take it off? I very much doubt it, and I think certainly they would probably appeal, and we would lose on appeal. I'm quite sure of that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. You're talking of an experience there. Thank you. Yes, Councillor Bay, if you wish to come back.
Yeah, I think Councillor Moore is before me, yes.
Beg your pardon.
Sorry.
Go on, Councillor Bayford, you're on. I'll come back to Paul in a moment.
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, okay. I understand that. It isn't big, but there was one application agreed, then the other one came back, which was bigger. And we were all adamant, I think it was unanimous, that this was the absolute maximum that we could accept. And now, okay, be it quite a small change, I just feel that developer is not respecting the decisions of the committee at all. I understand Councillor Alban's point that if it goes to appeal, we may lose it. So for that reason, I probably will go along with it. But I'm concerned that this is going to go on and on and on until this site is so cramped and so packed that it will be completely unsustainable for the people who live there. and for the neighbours. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bayford, and understand. I mean, I totally understand what Councillor Orban has said there. I mean, they've done it without permission. We have seen this before, but on this occasion, it is a smaller item, but I do understand people shouldn't do things without planning permission. Sorry, Councillor Moore, you came up at the same time, so...
Thank you, Chair. I fully understand what Councillor Bayford is saying. Why do we presume that these people don't understand planning regulations and what has been passed when it's been put before us in the first instance and we've stipulated A, B and C, yet they go and do G, F and I. I don't think it's right, but I believe what Councillor Orban has said is that they've chanced their arm, they've done it, they've put the retrospective in. It is minuscule, it doesn't make a great bearing on the matter, but they will get away with it. And that's my issue that I have, that someone has done something to try and get away with something again, and that we don't have any way of penalising these people when they do this. And I believe he will get away with it. If we go to appeal, we would lose it. But I did believe that Councillor Bayford said there are other amendments coming forward for this development as well. And on that instance, I would say, well, then we really need to look at that finitely and make a point. I'm not saying we penalise them, but we need to make sure that we are watching these people and that we do enforce when we have a chance. I don't think we'll have a particularly good chance enforcing this one, so it will probably get through the net. But again, it brings and highlights the issues that we have, that when these things are reported to enforcement, we don't have the manpower or the teamwork there to actually carry out the enforcement and produce it in a steady time frame. And there are still things that we've been issued previously on other applications that haven't been dealt with and don't seem to be dealt with, and we're not getting the feedback. So it does worry and concern me. But I do believe on both parts that it will get through. And Councillor Bayford and Councillor Orban have mentioned everything I was going to bring up. So thank you.
No, thank you for that, Councillor Moore. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. Just got a couple of comments. I totally agree with Joel and totally agree with Paul, to be honest with you. This has been going on and on and on. And I think people who do this are, as Paul very rightly put, chancing their arm. And I think it's got to be stopped at some stage. And I would like to see if Ian can answer the question for us, please. If there are more retrospective planning coming onto this site, can they not all be heard at once and dealt with in one issue rather than bit parts, so it becomes a bigger issue rather than just one infringement here, one infringement there and one infringement on the third property. So it's dealt as one big issue rather than three individuals, because I think then we have more control over what is going on, and I think we can have a better say in what is going on and deal with it in one big swoop. Thank you.
What I say to Councillor Hart, I think what you've said there, in principle, if that could happen, I think you're right. But in the way things work, it doesn't work that way, does it? These things happen at different times and so forth. This is my view, and I'm certainly not having a go at you for saying that, because I do understand again. But we've seen it with over the years where people, they're taking us for a little bit of a ride on occasions. It does happen, but I do understand now. And I will come to Councillor Orban before he falls asleep there.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the process allows, under national legislation, for someone to apply for incremental changes to a planning application that's granted permission. But there is specific provision within the MPPF, specifically cited, that changes shouldn't, I'm not going to use the exact words, but effectively it shouldn't degrade the quality of the scheme. And there is a specific paragraph which we have cited in reasons for refusal when someone has come back in to vary conditions and they are making the development worse from what's been granted permission. The issue with this scheme is that on the basis of the level of change that's being proposed in this instance, it is considered to be acceptable, and I think that's obviously been put forward in the report. Future applications, we can't require them to all come forward as one, but we do have to consider the extent of the changes that have already been made, as well as the decision that the planning committee made overall about the site, and that is taken into account. And so the next application, whilst considered on its own merits, will be informed by the fact that potentially, if this application gets approved, we've approved the expansion of this property, and therefore that mass is there, and therefore any further alterations to other dwellings to make them larger, if that's the proposal, or change the proposal, has to be considered in that context. And there is always a point which officers would draw, and indeed members will as well, which is that the changes have gone so far and they can't go any further. And that is something that is determined when looking at impact on character of area, as well as obviously impacts on living conditions in these sorts of instances. But in this specific application, it is considered that the changes are very minor, and the site specifically can support it. I agree, it's absolutely regrettable, frankly, that this site has come forward in this instance, and the fact that it's been built. It shouldn't come forward in that way. But the recommendation is for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Ian. Councillor Alban, just before I bring you in, I know you've moved, but I didn't think you had electricity till a couple of moments ago where you've moved to. So you wish to speak?
Yeah, I've stopped being a troglodyte now. I'm back into the land of the living. Yeah, I think what's important for members, Chair, is that, you know, Mr. Livingston's put it in far more eloquently than I can ever put it. But at the end of the day, you've got to deal with what's in front of you, and that is a very minor alteration to this building. And it also, members must take on board that it's not a criminal offence to build something without planning consent.
Yeah.
And if you want that, I mean, I know loads of councils have tried to get various governments throughout the years to change the legislation to ensure that should you build something without consent, then you can get prosecuted. But the governments won't do that.
Yeah.
They won't do that. So, you know, you can't, whilst it's annoying, of course it's annoying, but then you've got to look at what they've done and then decide, well, okay, if that had come in the first place, would we have approved it? Probably. And for me, the answer is yes. They haven't widened the plot. They haven't gone outside the plot in itself. All they've done is lined it up. So, you know, I just think it's not much to write home about, to be quite honest, yeah.
No, thank you for that. I think, you know, all of us who really take interest, and I can say we do, we see places all the time, but not all the time, but over the years, again, it's happened, and we have to accept things. So, right, Councillor Wright.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following on from the retrospective thing, we know that people do change their plans. That's fine. But I think that, I've said this once before, they know the rules. Before they do their minor change, they should come back to the planning department and tell them what they're going to do. When they do it and then apply retrospectively, I think it's actually an insult to the planning committees, because they know we can't do anything. And I think it's about time we stood up to that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Wright. I do agree, but as it's been touched on, we are aware that it does happen, and to enforce is a difficult thing. Councillor Moore, you wish to come back?
Yes, sorry, Chair. Councillor Alban's quite right. You know, people can build, they take the gambit. We do have legislation for building consent. That's why it's there. You can't be naive to say, I didn't know. I don't think this is the instance on this one. I think what they've done is they've looked at the footprint and they thought if they extend it out that little bit, it gives them a little bit more space. So they've done it in hindsight and then applied for retrospective. In hindsight, if they'd have come to us with that and gone to planning, I'm pretty sure planning, as they have done now, said it's so incremental that they would have approved it anyway, and therefore it would have been above, question. It's just the fact that they've done it and then come to us afterwards. Yes, there is no way of finding people. Yes, it is frustrating when this happens, but I just think it would be nice that if it's set in stone that people had to come back and do it properly, no one would get their back up. I mean, it does get people's backs up when you've said this is the maximum and then they do something else. It would be all right if they came back with the drawings and said, yes, here it is. Then we approved it. Then they did it. Excuse me. But they haven't. And that's the bit that niggles people, I think. So I'm for it because of what it is and where it is. It just annoys me that it's been done and we're getting after the matter, after the horse has bolted, as they say. Thank you, Chair.
I totally understand all the comments there, and I've just spotted Councillor Alban comment on screen here. I won't even go there, Councillor Alban. Okay. Members, I'm going to put this to you, which is recommendation of the officers to approve. Again, by now, as I keep saying, you know how it works. If you're for, against, or you're abstaining, please tell me. Councillor Coleman-Cook.
For.
Councillor Alban.
For.
Councillor Bayford.
I'll abstain, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Curry.
For.
Councillor Dennis.
For.
Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hart.
Unfortunately, Chair, I will go for 4.
Understand. Councillor Keane.
For.
Councillor Paulmore.
For, Chair.
Councillor Zazeski has left us. Councillor Wright.
Abstain.
Myself, I'm for, but I do understand what members have said tonight. Members, that is it. That has been carried, by the way. Thank you, James. Members, that concludes tonight's planning at 2 minutes past 8. Thank you very much. I think, again, excellent debate tonight on matters, and thank you to the officers. Thank you. And